apply the betadine solution on the patient while I get ready. Thank you. Okay, now I need a scalpel. We're going to make the incision right along the hairline. Yes, perfect. Now I need you to grab the two sides of the incision with the forceps. Good. Now we must look for the tumor within. I need you to drain that blood away. Okay, stop. That's good. Can you imagine what it'd be like without all our amazing surgical instruments we have today? Where would we be now? I mean, think about it. Could you hand me that rock? No, not that one, the sharper one. No, one more over. Yes! Now make the cut and don't break that rock. We can use it again later. Be careful. Oh, not that far. I guess we'll just have to deal with it. Now hold the skin with your fingers while I look around with my rock. Yeah, I'm pretty glad it's not like that. The instruments we have today are a huge contribution and affect many lives, sometimes determining whether a person will live or die. But around 2000 BC, that's probably what it would have been like. Obviously not exactly like that, but close. Archaeologists have found surgical tools, if you could call them that, made of obsidian rock that comes from volcanoes, like something like this. These tools were found in South America, along with the remains of some people that had undergone brain surgery. They had little holes in their heads, about that big. And the surgeons definitely didn't know about hygiene. No one even knew germs existed. No one really realized the significance of keeping your hands and tools clean during surgery. Now, there's a minimum risk of infection due to contamination of instruments. Okay, back to the surgery. We've successfully found the malignant tumor, and now we must carefully remove it. I'll need that scalpel again. I just cannot get over how huge of an innovation this was. It started thousands of years ago and has progressed to the present day, this little instrument that helps us so much. Of course, it wasn't always a shock back then. The Greeks actually had pretty advanced instruments considering their time period. They used bronze knives, like this. And, if you can believe it, bone forceps, another tool. One of the notable researchers and surgeons was Hippocrates. He helped the surgeon because he actually made a diagnosis before he operated, which really helped a lot. The doctors know what they're looking for instead of going on a blind mission for something they didn't even know existed. This way, their survival rate was greater because people were treated for the sickness they had. Hippocrates used a bronze knife and was credited with a lot of discoveries around 460 BC. He was the first able to identify and treat pneumonia and epilepsy. Now, up to this point, there had only been knives used, but during the 1st century AD, a Roman man named Celsus boldly recommended the first example of the scalpel. Now, the scalpel weren't like these. It was more like this. It was still made of bronze, sometimes steel, but it is one step closer to the scalpel we have today. Then, during the Dark Ages, absolutely no progression of any kind was made for medical instruments. There was still surgery being performed, of course, but it was very basic, and the surgeons didn't gain any new knowledge. Okay, we have successfully removed the growth. Now we just need to take care of that bleeding and then stitch it back up. Good job, guys, we're almost done. Nowadays, we have a lot of time to operate on the patient without them experiencing pain. So, not so long ago, in the 1800s, even the early 1900s, surgery had to be fast, and that's how they picked out the best surgeons. The best could amputate a limb or do a quick surgery within a couple of minutes. There was just too much pain for the patient to handle. Surgery was very basic and just plain dangerous. Sir John Eric Erickson, a British surgeon for Queen Victoria, once said, "The abdomen, the chest, and the brain will forever be shut from the intrusion of the wise and humane surgeon." No one ever thought it would be possible for surgeons to be inside the body around the major organs. However, Joseph Lister helped the surgeons along the way to, eventually, be able to operate in the areas John Erickson thought impossible. Lister had been reading Louis Pasteur's work on how wine sours. He formed a theory that the microbes carried in the air could be spread, and decided that it was the wound itself that needed to be treated. The first time he tested his theory, he covered a piece of lint in carbolic acid. He put this on the patient's wound and waited for the results. The carbolic acid improved the patient's health, so he started using it more often. He was also the first to suggest washing your hands, wearing gloves, and cleaning your instruments after they are used. He started this method in 1869. Okay, perfect job, you guys. Now I'll just have to stay in recovery for a couple hours and she'll be good as new. Nowadays we have, the innovation of surgical instruments is huge, but it wasn't always just the instruments that changed. Oftentimes, medicine will be found, and that helps us change the tools later. For example, ether, which was used in the 1830s mainly as a substitute for drinking, was found to work on patients as an anesthesia. Soon afterward, in the early 1900s, a man named Harvey Cushing used ether on his patients during a surgery. Cushing is considered the father of modern neurological surgery. He lowered the mortality rate from 90% to 10%. And at the end of his career, had removed more than 2,000 tumors. He used a scalpel close to how they are today, if not exactly the same. His techniques are still being used today. After this, smaller discoveries were found, each one making it easier for surgeries to be performed. In 1928, Sir Alexander Fleming discovered that certain bacteria could be killed by penicillium. He published his discovery, but no one realized the significance of it until 10 years later. In 1938, Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and Norman Heatley developed a powdery form of the medicine penicillin, which replaced the carbolic acid to kill bacteria. 4 years later, in 1942, Griffith and Johnson combined halogenated hydrocarbons, which helped to numb the pain, and Carrere, which reduced the reflexive response to surgical instruments, creating the first anesthesia. This is still used today. This cleared the way for future surgeons to be able to operate in more delicate areas. All throughout the 20th century, records of various famous surgeons, such as Harvey Cushing, Edmund Andrews, Robert Boslow, and so many more, use example of the scalpels we have today: shiny, steel, and very sharp. Each of these doctors used this tool in their surgeries, contributed to their society, and helped save lives. All these men in history also contributed to the innovation of surgical instruments, but what really stands out is they took something entirely new and applied it to help impact, change, and save so many lives. Maxwell Maltz, a U.S. surgeon and author, once said, "Often the difference between a successful man and a failure is not one's better ideas or abilities, but the courage that one has to bet on his abilities, to take a calculated risk, and to act." The innovation of surgical instruments is ongoing and will continue to progress. They definitely did have an impact and change on history that helped save many lives. Even now, scientists and surgeons are improving, modifying, and inventing surgical instruments, doing everything possible to make us safer.